So, for our final session on collaboration technologies, would you please welcome Bruce Everest from Vodafone and Simon Cohen from Condeco to share their experience of how new technology can accurately measure true utilization to maximize real estate. Ladies and gentlemen, Bruce and Simon. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Last session before coffee, so please stay awake. It's not going to be too long. Some of you might know our business for our meeting room and desk booking technologies. That's not what we're here to talk about today. You may not be aware that for the last 2 years we've been measuring people's offices, measuring their utilisation and occupancy using technology. So we thought it might be interesting to share some of our findings, some interesting facts and figures, and some case studies on what some of our customers have done. So. Moving on, so we work with some of the biggest companies in the world. Some of you might be in the room today, what we've found, and what most people believe to be the case, is that office utilisation, people believe office utilisation is around 60 to 70%. Now I think probably in this room we're a bit more educated than that, and we know that it's a bit lower. We found from our studies that occupancy is a lot lower than that. So, and in particular, the two stats on the left here are the most interesting. Average office utilisation across our studies is only 39%, and peak occupancy across our studies is 64%. So at no point do offices get busier than 64% on average based on what we've seen across our customers. So we thought that might be interesting to put that into something a bit more meaningful, and in particular the building where we're in now. So if this building was being used based on the facts that we found out from our customers, we would find that we're only filling up to here in this building. And if we looked at the peak average of our customers, we'd be here at only 64%, leaving all of this space effectively empty in this building. And guess where we are? We're above that line. So, so if we happen to today fill this building based on how many people are in the building, starting one seat at a time, one meeting room at a time, we would probably only get to here, but on a really busy day we might get to here, and this floor wouldn't even be here potentially. So it's quite interesting when you look at it in that sense, and you look at the wasted space that's taking place within office environments at the moment. Some other interesting stats across Europe, US and Australia, in particular showing slight differences in terms of how well office space is being occupied. And we're a little bit ahead of the game in Europe, and I think that's probably because of rising and higher property costs. I think probably we're a little bit more technically aware, although probably the US and Australia would say something different. But it's just interesting to see that, that we are making better steps in terms of using our office space better. So how are people measuring how they're using their office space? We talked earlier on, we heard earlier on about evidence-based design, evidence-based decisions, and that's where our business is coming from in terms of helping customers to make the right decisions based on science rather than sort of finger in the air or hearsay. And so there's various things, and you may well have been using these elements yourselves. You've probably got experience of using them. Interviews are a very easy, quick way of getting information about how your space is being used, so you can understand which departments are busy, which are not so busy. Walkthrough studies are useful as well, but in both cases it's not good solid evidence, and it's questionable. It can often be questioned on whether the data is real or not. I spoke to a few people today actually that told me that they're doing, are using their security systems to know how many people are in the building. And in terms of a study, in terms of understanding how you're using their space, yes, it does tell you how many people are in the building, but it doesn't tell you where they are. So it's sometimes an easy thing to do, but the data's not that great in terms of it's not really going to help you make those decisions. Where we're heading to is sort of the latter end in terms of getting really decent data to be able to help you make those decisions. The network sniffer is a way of using your IT network to, when you plug your laptop in, the network knows where you are, or when you connect to a particular Wi-Fi node, it knows where you are. And our business does sensor studies using technology. And that's when we talk about the studies we've been doing, some of the data that I've been showing you, that's what we're using. And if we keep it off network and we can implement it very quickly, and whether it's 1 to 3 months to 6 months or a permanent study, the data that you get from there is it's far more, it's a much tighter business case. And an interesting analogy is actually we're in probably the centre of the financial centre of the world at the moment, the biggest financial centre in the world. And in this building, people are making decisions every day on how much money should I invest in these shares or stocks or currencies. And when a dealer, a trader, whatever they call themselves these days, is thinking, well, shall I invest in GSK shares today? They're not sort of asking the guy next to them or the head of HR or overhearing what somebody said on the tube in the office on the way in. They're taking in data. They've got 6, 9, 12 screens in front of them. They're looking at the latest news, the latest economic figures. They're looking at historic trends, and they're making decisions based on evidence. And we look at things exactly the same way. If you're making a £5 million, £10 million investment in property for the next 10 years, don't base it on information that is in many cases subjective. You need to really be looking at good, hard, solid evidence before you make those kind of decisions. So I wanted to tell you about one customer that we had a very interesting project with last year. GE came to us and they basically wanted to close 2 small buildings, and the head of property knew that their head office in the Arc in the UK was in Hammersmith. I don't know if you know that building, was not being used as well as it could be. But he couldn't prove that, and all the heads of department said, no, we need the space. And so we went in and we did a study. We put 1,000 sensors under all the desks, and we very quickly found that there were about 150, 200 desks that were never used in a 6-week study that we did. And there were another similar amount of 150 desks that were used less than 20% of the time. And that was all the data that he needed. He was able to go back to those departments and say, you're going to have less space now. I know you said you're using it, but here's the evidence. We know you're not using it. And he was able to close those buildings, and it saved over £2 million a year. And it was so easy to do, and we sort of introduced some of our other technologies, including desk booking software. And there we go, so nearly 7,000 iPhone 6s. That's a new phone for almost everyone in that office, by the way. And that was what they were wasting each year. And here's, if you come to our stand, actually, we'll show you this in a bit more detail, but this is the dashboard of data that we provide, where it very easily breaks down your desks into, we never use these were 1 to 20% of the time. This is how we allow our customers to make easy decisions based on fact, based on science. Another study that we're doing as well with a media company, both in London and in the US, looking at when the study is finished and they're able to close the buildings that they want to close, they're looking at savings again of over £2 million a year, and that's about 142 new minutes every year, in case you're interested. So that's it for the first part of the presentation. As you may have heard before, this is a presentation in 2 parts. I'm going to introduce you to Bruce Everest. Bruce is Bruce is head of Better Ways of Working from Vodafone, who are one of our customers, in fact, we're one of your customers as well, who's going to talk to us about transitions, the transition of their office from old ways of working to new ways of working, and Bruce will tell you all about it.
Cool. Thanks, Simon.
Thanks,
you don't
Bruce.
literally have to say hello to me, that's all right. Don't worry about that. So essentially what I wanted to just touch on, let me just start with a couple of opening thoughts. This is a really, really good one. So not survival of the strongest, but survival of the entity that's the most responsive to change. How adaptable we are. It's a really good Darwin quote. So this is about people. This is about getting your organisation to change and making it something that people are going to buy into. So I hear this a lot. What's in it for me? Why should I? If you take my desk, what's next? My job? And there's a lot of human nature involved in this, and you need to take that into account. One of the other quotes is a really good one. This is a Churchill quote, and he talked about the architect designs the building, and we come up with an idea of what things should look like. We look across the skyline at the Shard. What's to stop an organisation moving in there with fax machines, 9 to 5, command and control, offices and corridors, and fixed phones? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. It's just the way that we think and the way that we're driving stuff. So what is it that other people are doing, given access to the same resources and the same budgets and the same times of austerity and the same employment pool and the same access to property in this country, and how are some people doing it different and some people making mistakes? So I was just going to walk you through that in the next 5 minutes. Vodafone's a very young company. We only just celebrated being 30 years old. In fact, the mobile phone's a very young innovation. The first phone call was only made in 1985, just over the road in St Catherine's Dock. Someone made the first public consumer phone call. In fact, it was Ernie Wise, a comedian, for those of you that can remember back that far. Things aren't that old. It's a relatively new technology, making phone calls out the office. And we suffered as we grew, like all other companies do. We started buying small pockets of space. We didn't think big. And what we've done is turn the company into haves and have-nots. Inconsistent IT, disparate resources, poor utilisation of space, energy inefficient, awful place to come and visit because no one could park anywhere. So what we did was we found a home, a new home, and we built a central campus, and we started to tick off some of these elements in here. And during that transition, one of the things that we did, and how I met Simon several years ago, as we started to look at what we do with our partners, was to look at technology as the enabler. And that was very different. I've got 27 years background in IT, and only in the last 3 or 4, certainly as people like me in IT, ever gone out and asked users what they think, or what they thought, or would they like. We used to say, it's the new laptop and the version of Windows. Please don't ask me about what operating system you really like, because we've made this decision. And IT was very different and very disparate to the business case. So what we did was we started to look at what we really needed. And one of the elements around room booking was a massive amount, I'm sure you're all suffering with, was of no-shows. 58% no-shows. I book the room, but I don't turn up, and therefore I rob other people in the organisation of that space. Once we worked out those spaces were between 40 and 60,000 pounds worth of resources, we started to get a bit tougher. And we had a chief exec at the very top that started to make demands from the top downwards, and we started to introduce change. But we did it by including HR to make the policies and understand the human side of it, by incorporating the property people to do all the changes to the space, and including IT. And as we started to get smarter and learn more about it, we also included our facilities management team at Mighty, our friends at Condeco, and we started to make a real change. But only when we started to drive based on people, need, space, process, and use technology as the enabler. So a couple of things that we did with the Condeco system that worked in 2007 and still work today was actually starting to have some space bookable. About 85% of our space is bookable, but some of our space is non-bookable. Those are the private areas, the ad hoc areas, what we call huddle space. Where do I go to get away from everybody in an open plan office? You've already heard that this morning from other speakers. You need to think about the human side of it as well. We use a feature called auto bump. How many people have ever heard of that? Probably not many. Even people with a few hands. A few people with Condeco systems might not even know you can do that. I book a room at 3 o'clock. I have till 3:15 to turn up. If I don't turn up at 3:16, I'm auto bumped. So our rooms, our 450 collaboration areas, are only unavailable for 15 minutes. If you don't turn up 3 times in a trot and get auto-bumped, an email's sent to a manager, not your manager, a manager, and that manager's authorised to ban you for 28 days. If you do not follow the processes, you're going to feel the pain. That's 12,800 people, from a CEO all the way down to a contractor. Consistency. It's interesting. So lots of areas that we've started to look at, and Condeco was the enabling technology for us to start to deal with things like room booking, take the passion and the people out of booking spaces and booking meeting rooms. And in fact, what we've got today really at Vodafone in Newbury, and you're all welcome to come and have a look at what we've done. We've made some amazing changes in that 14-year journey, is actually today we've got a situation where we've got 7,000 places to sit and no one has a desk. That's a bit of a bold statement, isn't it? There are no offices. We hardly print anything, and there's very little storage. Now that's taken a hell of a journey to get there. Effectively what we have today is a 32-acre site with 51,000 square metres of collaboration space. Now that's a bold area to move into, and you can't get to us on the Docklands Light Railway, sorry about that. You're going to have to come to Newbury in the middle of the countryside, but we needed to make a change, we needed to make it fit for purpose, and we've been on a journey. And we learned 4 things, and you've heard other presenters talk about their 4 things. We learned space, people, process and technology are the 4 dimensions to transform an organisation. If you don't deal with all 4, it all goes wrong. Just looking at technology, just dictating policy, just changing the space. You've got to look at all 4 of those areas. So some of the things that we've seen, and people often say to me, that sounds great, Bruce, but what was tangible? What did you actually do? How much did you spend, and what was the net result? Some of these things are really interesting around Net Promoter Score. Stop me or heckle me if you don't think this is true. People that are trusted and based on output and performance and given the right technology to just get on and do their job are happier and give better service. It's as simple as that. So we've actually seen our customer sat go up, our market position go up, we've overtaken our nearest competitor, we've got a better place to work, we can attract and retain the right staff, we can bring in 22-year-olds, train them, and they actually stay with us instead of move on to work for you guys or other people. And we've actually got lots of elements around here where we're using the space differently. It's the same 30-acre, 51,000 square metre site, we started with in 2003. We just use it differently, and we have a different set of behaviours. Technology drove that by enabling the change. The organisation elements that it addressed really are the ones that you'll all be working with: attracting and retaining staff, work-life balance, inflexible, flexible working policies. I'm sure many of you come across that. Yes, you can work from home, you just need to apply 2 weeks in advance. It's not flexible. We worked with Lloyd's of London a couple of months ago. I won't tell you who it was that said this, but he said, we have a flexible working policy, everyone gets Sunday off. We laughed, and he meant it. And that's just the way that things are at the moment. But very siloed, and a lot of presenteeism. You heard that earlier on from when we were talking about the HR elements. I'm at my desk, burning the midnight oil. Good old Bruce, he's always first in and last out. Well, what happened to the efficient people that are really good at their jobs, that really need that flexibility of not being there at 9 and leaving at 5:30? Property costs, rationalisation, doing more with less, fairly much given, and then the technology on the other side. But in order to hit employee, employer, customers and regulators, you need all of the people that are involved in these projects to be centrally focused. We just call it better ways of working. What we really mean is business and workplace and workspace transformation. And the last thing just to touch on, so what are we doing? And a lot of people have talked about futures and where they're going with this element. And this is a video that's available on YouTube if you want to have a look at it. It's Vodafone's headquarters in 24 hours, speeded up. So what we've learned is 3% of our 12,800 people opted out from being tracked on a company-issued mobile phone. We have ANPR number plate recognition to let you in the car park. We have security passes to let you in the doors, and we have various sensors all around the building to check where people go and what they do. And none of it was joined together until we pointed it all at a dashboard and started to give that information on who sits where, who went where, what time they go to lunch. I'm not interested in individuals, we're interested in human swarming. So now I can tell the mighty crew where the busiest areas of the building is, and they can send the cleaners there. And now we're beginning to get into intelligent buildings and machine to machine. Things that were done can now be chipped and now be connected to 4G networks and tell you there's a problem. They can tell you they're needing to be clean. They can vending machines that say they're empty. Sorry, M25, M6 speed cameras, that's us. Things like that, bus stops, intelligent bits of architecture, really, really interesting. And that's where we're going with something called Condeco Sense that Simon just mentioned earlier on. Getting the data back, there's a great quote earlier on. You know, give me the data and let me base something on something that's real, not on opinion and not on hearsay and what people really want. So that's a real whistle-stop tour. You're all welcome to come down and see it. We do about 250 tours a year. If you're a Vodafone customer, speak to your account manager or come and see us afterwards. Thanks.
Just one more slide. So, and I should say that Bruce's the process that Bruce went through, the transformation process that they took themselves through was so successful that the CEO said to them, well, we should be sharing this with our customers, and they now take this as I think a not-for-profit service they now offer to their customers. Every customer is different, but the process that you go through in terms of baselining what you're doing today and looking at where you want to be tomorrow is the same, and they've been very successful in sharing those ideas with the customers. Just one final thing, and we've talked about a lot of this already, but in terms of the whole transformation process, driving that transformation process, we believe that it does start with accurate data, but we've also found from our customers that that actually the saving that our customers are making on their real estate funds the entire transformation process. So, and in many cases, some of you will be going through this journey at the moment, some of you will be planning it, but if you're looking at your real estate and wondering if you do need all of that space, the occupancy savings that can be made through having the right data and making the right decisions can fund all the rest of the stuff that we've been hearing about today. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Great stuff. Any questions before we move on? Yes, I thought there might be a couple. So once again, please wait for the microphone, your name and your company, and then a question.
My name is Sabine Bink from Royal Haskoning DHV. I have a question for Bruce. Did you face any privacy issues with the monitoring of all these data?
No, essentially we gave everybody the option to opt out. Essentially what we're doing is anonymising it, so we're not looking for where people started their journey. We don't track people at home, we track them from the second they enter Vodafone's property. We're really looking for where they park, what time they come in. We're looking for dwell time, not just whether they came and went, how long, where did they stay, what time did they go to lunch. And what we do with that information is tell them exactly what we're up to. We don't keep anything secret, it's no covert, nothing sneaky. What we've got very good at over the last 10 years at Vodafone is telling people in phases what we're going to do and why, getting them to buy in, doing it, giving them feedback, and then moving forward. So we get very few people very worried about what are they up to, this is all Big Brother and my manager's seeing where I am. To be honest, we're tracked so much. I know we don't want to think about how much we're tracked with CCTV and GPS and everything, but it's what you do with it and how you tell people and the benefits.
So you share all this information as well?
It's all shared in terms of what we do with it and what the output is. We don't make it available. We're not. Okay. We're not profiting for doing that. And we're certainly not doing anything with your data if you're a Vodafone customer. Even though we do know where you live based on how long your phone stays still and all that kind of stuff.
One more question?
That's made you worried, hasn't it?
Thank you.
Thanks, it's Jim Reed from Arup. One for Bruce. Very impressed, Bruce, with your the facilities you created at your Newbury...
It wasn't just me.
Oh, sorry.
Lots of other people involved.
But my question is that this is great, but you are perhaps not unique, but it's fairly special. The company's in a minority by forging through all of these smart ways of analysing data, analysing movements of people and stuff. I just wondered whether we'll ever reach the stage, and I'd be interested in your reaction, where all buildings are built this way and it becomes the norm.
So what's interesting is we've had to take what was designed in 2000, so we moved into the old Newbury Showground, so it's waste ground, and we built a building purposefully in 2003 that by 2007 didn't work, because we moved in with traditional thinking, and we generated hierarchy and tribalism. We thought everybody needed a desk, and it turns out everybody doesn't need a desk. So we ended up kind of retrofitting everything. Now, I do appreciate everybody's not on a 30-acre site with a lake and landscape gardens, and we have a very nice place to change. And I work with a lot of customers up here in Grade 2 listed that can't just take all the walls down and open the offices up. Are we going to see buildings that are like that? I'm not sure whether we need to start from the ground up. The architects are always going to design something where my equipment doesn't work. So funnily enough, you can't get a 4G signal in the Shard until we ran indoor technology in there because of the Faraday effect and glass. We're always going to have stairs and staircase and fire exits and health and safety and ceilings. And I think if we make it too funky, do we need bean bags? Do we need slides and fireman's lifts and AstroTurf and football tables? Certainly not in Vodafone, it's not our culture. Lloyds of London didn't particularly want to meet customers on bean bags, and neither did Coots. So I don't know. If your culture says, let's make it really wacky and funky and that will drive productivity, then go for it. But I would suggest that what you really want to do is make people use the space that you've got differently. I don't think we necessarily need to design that in. Having said that, intelligent building sensors, controls, like the kind of stuff that you can see from the control companies that are here, and building slightly different technologies into the building from day one might be of interest, I think. So for instance, let me give you an instance and then I'll stop talking. We're removing the last piece of Ethernet cabling next year in January. So we've got no LAN equipment, very, very little in the way of fixed connectivity. We want everybody to be untethered. Secondly, we want everybody to be collaborating. And if we let customers in to use our space and collaborate, dyadic and triadic working is a term, I'm not sure if you all come across that. Groups of 2s and 3s coming together for short periods of time. We don't want people opening floor boxes and sticking in things that we don't know about. So we're not going to have floor boxes. I know we'd say that with Vodafone, but everything's going to be flooded, 4G, smartphones, untethered, unwired, clutter-free. That might take some thinking and a new design of a building.
Beautiful.
That was
Bruce.
a long-winded answer, sorry.
No, that was great. Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Simon. It was wonderful.